My name is Golda Fania. I am 28 years old and I've been living in Denmark for 16 years, 9 years as a child, and then now 7 years as an adult.
I thought you were born here in Denmark.
No.
Where did your accent come from?
I was born in Sierra Leone, so I lived in Sierra Leone for 3 years, and then I came to Denmark in '94.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, how much do you recall? Since then you were here, you ever went back?
No, I went back in 2017. I went back for 7 weeks because I did an internship.
You came here alone or with your parents or?
The first time I came with my cousins and aunt and to join my mother because she had come first. And then the second time, so I moved away. I lived in the States for 9 years as well. And then I moved back to Denmark by myself at the age of 21.
Why States? Why did you move to States?
Well, it wasn't really my choice. It was my parents that chose it. And my mom really wanted us to have an English education. In the global aspect, I think she thought English would benefit us a lot more.
So why your parents chose to come to Denmark?
Well, I don't think it was a choice. I think it was the Civil War, so my mom was, I think she just had an opportunity to come to Europe, and then she landed in Denmark.
You want to talk a little bit about the war that was in Sierra Leone? Do you have got any knowledge about it, how it was?
I know that it lasted at least 11 years, and it was because of the whole diamond trade, and it was mostly rebels that were being fueled because of the political instability. It was rebels from the north. They were a bit unsatisfied with the government, and they didn't feel that there was so much investment in the villages or like towns as it is in the capital, and then fueled by this whole diamond trade and then getting weapons from our neighboring countries. So it was very unfortunate.
2000, you said you went back to...
I went 2017. I was there.
All right, so now kind of you go often to Sierra Leone, right?
No.
No.
I've been studying. So I recently finished studying last year, and I've considered going back, but I haven't had time because I was looking for a job, and I'm definitely going back this year.
Just for visit and return?
Visit and return.
You said that you finished your studies last year?
Yes.
What did you start?
I finished my master's in human nutrition, and I have a bachelor's in global nutrition and health, and then currently just taking a coaching education online.
Last time I met you in a business forum, I think, of business.
The exhibition?
Exhibition, yes. You present yourself as a nutritionist and you're studying your business. Can you tell me how it is this business in this part of the world?
I would say in Denmark it's not the same as living maybe in the UK or maybe in like Germany, because there are not a lot of black people, and the people of color that are in Denmark are a majority from Middle Eastern or Arabs. So there you have a different type of network and community that you can back off, get support from in terms of your business. But when you're black, especially here in Denmark, it's a smaller network. So if you're going to start a business, you really have to know the right people if you want that type of support. However, there is a lot of support from the government in terms of just having information. They're very big on entrepreneurship. They're very big on like foreigners coming and doing it, but businesses don't usually last that long. So for me, I think my biggest struggle has been getting clients and also finding out my purpose with my business. So I took a break for a little while. But I think I will start again. I'm just going to do it in a different perspective. I want to go a bit larger. Well, my biggest aim is to create a company that is focused on employees. So right now I have been doing one-on-one consultations, and it's completely fine, but I just feel that creating a business where I don't just work with the individual health, but also health in terms of like communities or businesses. That's where I want to go and work with the corporate culture and employee well-being. I think definitely exposure is the number one thing, because when people, I mean, visibility is important for any type of business. The only reason why we support the businesses that we do now is because they're visible to us. So I think what the Black community needs, which is why I support the Black-owned business initiative, is that you make these businesses visible. So if you need some help, at least I can refer you. We also have to be better at referring people. We have to be better at actually saying, okay, I may not be able to do this, but someone else can do it. Let me redirect you to this person of color. Also better at asking specifically for people of color or Black people when you need a service. So if you need someone to come paint your house, you ask, do you know a Black person who paints houses? You know, that's not something we're very good at, because we also have a lot of mistrust towards one another. So I think moving forward, it would be that mentality of trusting one another and supporting one another. And of course, if someone does you wrong, like anybody would, then you call them out and you hold them accountable. But you cannot judge a whole community based on your bad experience with one individual.
You just point out something very interesting. You say that there is a mistrust between or among us.
Yeah.
Do you know exactly why is that? Why is that this mistrust?
I think because we've been socialized and conditioned to not trust each other. I mean, we come from countries of civil war, a lot of us, and our divide has been colonial. So when we come to Europe, we're often told that you're supposed to be as white or as non-African as possible, because the closer you are to your culture, the more bad you are, the more savage or whatever they associate with Africans. Whereas that means that I would rather, or many people would rather, associate more with whiteness or Danishness, because then they feel, oh, Denmark, they have a good system, everything's working, they know how to do it. It must be because they're not African, you know? Where I think it's unfortunate, because nobody reaches this stage of development if not trusting one another. And everyone in the whole world have come from a point in time where people were stealing and people were lying, and there's still people stealing and lying here. So all the excuses is basically something we've been conditioned to think, so that we move further and further away from each other and therefore don't build community.
What do you think that it should be done in order to see like people to avoid this mistrusting each other or one another and building, to have a really strong community?
I definitely think the beginning is to have conversations about it and just being honest and saying there is a mistrust here and I don't want to work with Black people. You know, it's okay to admit it and say I have had some bad emotions, because I also think I don't want to diminish people's experiences, and I don't want to invalidate the fact that some people really have had bad experiences. So talking about it is a beginning, and then secondly, trying to see, okay, well, what can I do? How can I add my 2 piece? References is the way I do it. So I also do hair. I've been doing hair for almost 10 years. But now when people say, can you do my hair? If I don't have time, or if I don't think I can do it, I will just refer another person, you know, and that's in a way connecting people to each other. And then next thing you know, this person can earn, but also I have introduced 2 people to each other that didn't know each other, and therefore building a community in that way. And then I also think that we have to start acknowledging our own responsibility in this. There's so many people that can complain and say nothing's happening, or we're not going anywhere, or Black people are not doing this or that. And I'm just like, but you don't know that, because you're not actually meeting every single Black person. I meet new people all the time, and I've lived in this country quite a long time. So my little assumption of what's actually happening in the world is quite limited.
Do you think we Blacks have got less knowledge about nutrition? That's why probably don't try to find coach, someone who
Yeah.
can.
I think the thing about our culture is that food has a different meaning than it does in the West. So in our culture, food is a way of gathering people. It's when I come to your house, you give me food. It is when I have a wedding, we have food. I mean, there's nowhere we go where food is not. So food is quite central in the way we socialize with people. With that also does that people don't really think so much about the nutritious part of their food. It's more the taste and the enjoyment. And I think that's fine, actually. So what my business wants to focus on is not so much about getting people to start counting calories or losing weight or having to look a certain way. My thing is just having a healthy relationship with food, so that when you look outside and you see these skinny women, because that's all you see in magazines, you don't think, well, I have curves, I need to look differently because these skinny women are getting advice. I rather have that you embrace your curves, but you focus more on, can I be healthy both emotionally and mentally? So that's where my coaching comes in. It's nutrition to keep yourself energized and to make sure that you're eating right, but it's also coaching and nutrition for the emotions and the mind. And that's hard because in our community we use family to deal with emotions and our mental health, and sometimes it's hard for Black people to come out and say they need a coach, they need someone to help them where family or friends cannot help them.
I go back, we have got the biggest problem when it comes to malnutrition.
Yes. Yes, that's very true.
In the continent. The diaspora are the people who be able to kind of revolutionize the development in the continent. Malnutrition is one of the biggest problems there, and many other problems we've got in Africa.
Yeah.
Do you think one day we will be able to set up something in the continent so we'll be able to develop there?
Yeah, I mean,
instead of concentrate here where we already have got everything's done?
I would say the whole point of me taking my education was Africa focused. I mean, since I was 18, I knew I was going to go to Africa. That's why I left the States to come closer. And all my internships have been, except for one, has been on the continent. So I've been in Sierra Leone for 7 weeks, where I worked with malnutrition, with the communities, both in the hospital with what's it called, severe malnutrition, which kids that are clinically inpatient, but I also worked in outpatient, which is malnutrition but in the communities. So talking to the mothers, weighing their kids, giving them all the nutrition facts that they should, and that was very, very interesting. And I really, it was the woman that set up that system in Sierra Leone is a diaspora. So she lived out for some years and then she came back and completely revolutionized, set up a nutrition program, trained nutritionists, have nutritionists all over the country. I was really inspired. And then my second internship was in Ghana, where I stayed for 3 months. And there I was working with maternal health and doing a research project there. So I definitely think that I am headed towards Africa. And like I said, that's why I said my goal is to start here small, but at the same time, I'm thinking of ideas that can be implemented there. So when I think of employee health or employee well-being, I'm also thinking of, well, what are the working conditions that they have? Because I spend a lot of time talking to doctors and nurses in Sierra Leone and understanding the conditions that they work in. And then I also think in terms of children, malnutrition, what they eat is one thing. Another thing is that they don't have an outlet. They don't have, I mean, in Sierra Leone we have no playgrounds, which is huge in terms of development. When you think of childhood memory, you always think of playing outside in playgrounds with kids. So I'm constantly thinking of ways in which I could influence the countries, the different countries, and then how I can use not only nutrition but also emotional and mental health to affect the next generation. I mean, in terms of what I worked with, there's what we call a double burden of disease, which is the fact that their food, like I said, food is very centralized in terms of the way we socialize, but at the same time, food is also scarce when it comes to certain families, and poverty still being a big factor in Sierra Leone. It's compared to Ghana, Sierra Leone is still very economically and politically behind. But even in Ghana, we saw malnutrition. So I think it's this whole aspect of their food is there, but it's also not necessarily the right foods in the right portions, and also just access to food. You can have families where there are kids that are malnourished, but the adults are obese, you know, and that's that double burden where how are food being allocated. I would say that. For example, one thing that I really was passionate about when I was down there, I was walking one day home from my internship, and then I see a woman feeding her child, but the child was sick or not eating. I'm not sure if they were sick, but like loss of appetite, it was obvious. And then the woman was trying to force feed the child, which seemed like a natural traditional practice in our culture, but it's actually really dangerous because the likelihood of that child choking because of the force feeding is very high. And then when you take the child to the hospital, then you're shocked because you're like, oh, I don't know what happened, but it's because the food went down the wrong tube. So that's also things I want to fight, is this whole changing the perception of what a baby is supposed to look like, what a growing child is supposed to look like, and how much food is okay, and how to like work with children and increase their appetite in natural ways. I think the only Danish food I really like is Christmas food, because it finally has some spice and taste, you know. But I after some years of living here again, I realized that I'm losing my appetite. So I consciously learned how to cook the traditional Sierra Leonean dishes, and then I gained my appetite again.
Networking that your social is lacking doesn't exist.
But there's among women, I would say that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have two groups. We have one group called the Women of Color. It's a larger group with not only black people but also Arabs and Asians and Indians, and you know. But then we have another group called Black Women, and within the Black Women group we have several initiatives. We have the Black Women Sanctuary. We meet once a month to just sit in a circle and talk. And then two, we have the Black Women's Brunch, where it's like, again, it was supposed to be once a month, and then we have different activities, cook food. Sometimes we sit and watch a show together. The initiative that I'm thinking to do now is called Black Fitness, Health and Beauty. And that's because I realized there are a lot of people that are interested in fitness, health and beauty. It's a huge part of our lives, but there are not a lot of visible personal fitness trainers that are black or women. I see the men, but not so many women. And then in terms of health, again, there are not a lot of health coaches, nutritionists within this field. And in beauty, there are people who do beauty things, but they're not visible. Like you said, we don't know where to get them unless you get a referral. So I'm thinking to start an initiative. We already had our first session last Saturday, where we hired a black fitness trainer to come in, and then we trained with her for an hour. And then afterwards, I arranged a brunch where we sat down and then we discussed shortly just about our goals for 2020 and how 2019 have been. So focused a lot on the physical, the emotional, and the mental.
How many are you now in the group?
In the Black Women's group? Oh, I don't even know.
Oh, in all groups. You said there are 3 groups, right?
No, it's like one group that's called the Black Women's Group in Copenhagen online, and then there are 3 initiatives going on. Yeah, and depending on the availability, like for the 1st January, Black Women's Sanctuary for January, we were 15 people that showed up. For my event, there was a cap limit, so we could only be 10. But I'm trying to make it where we can be a bit more. For example, if I hire Zozo, who does yoga, she could probably host more people. And so in this larger group, we're like hundreds. I don't know how many the number is, but like maybe 200 or 300. But then we make these initiatives to start, and I'm hoping to collaborate with Black-owned business, with Jason, so that when he has his conferences, I could also come in and have a session either on meditation or on yoga or just having like a dance or exercise. So trying to get people moving and then talking about emotional and mental health. The hardest people to reach are probably the older, like when I say older, I mean like probably people who are like in their late 30s with kids, because unless you're active on Facebook or you're going out, then it's hard to reach you. But right now we have 2 groups online, and one of the groups called Black Girl Magic, that's a Danish, like for Afro-Danes, but like it's in Danish. So the Black Women's group is in English, the other one is in Danish. That one has like 600 or like 400 or something. You know, like it's a lot more people. So there is an online community. The hard thing is, or the challenge is to get people out, which is why, for example, there's a girl that started a new business called Get the Black Box. And in her business, she's providing beauty products from different places in the world where you can buy it, and it's only tailored for Black women.
I see.
So hair products, makeup, everything in the box is for Black women. And when I was speaking to her, because I was doing her hair, I told her, this is really good. It's like something we need, because you can't find beauty products in Denmark for Black women. Even if it exists, they don't purchase the products here in Denmark. You have to go to London or go elsewhere. So I said, but what you need is to get people to meet you. So you need to make events. You need to get people out and start online, but then go in person. And she really, really liked that, and she was like, I never really thought about that. And I said, that is our challenge, is that we can connect online, see each other, we can't create relationships. And if you have to create a community, you need to start by building relationships. And once the relationships are established, then we can trust each other, and then we can start building this community that we want. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.